Here comes your... Welcome, everybody, to the Streakers Island Podcast live edition for the Canadian Football League. Oh, Canada. Now, welcome to this live edition of the Streakers Island Podcast, powered by Streakers Gaming. You might be thinking the crew looks a little empty today. Chazzy and Mr. More for your money will get here. Dan is eating some delicious local cuisine, while Chazzy is hitting some baseballs, hopefully out of the park for some home runs. But of course, it is I, Jacob Moore, the self-proclaimed sports analyst. And you know what I say? Do we really need Dan and Chazzy when we have Lane Dashing Dashco on board? I don't know. He's dashing through the snow in his one-horse open sleigh. Like, what else do you need besides of Lane Dashing Dashco? Am I right? I think I'm right.
I mean, yeah, it gives more room for my beautiful face to take up on the screen. When other people are here, I feel like I lost in the shuffle, but, you know, there's only two people. They get to see a lot more of moi.
And, man, who doesn't want to see more of Lane? Like, nobody. Everyone wants to see more of Lane. But I got to say that with the CFL season kicking off here, it is great to see Canadian football is back. I do want to start off by saying, Lane, I don't know if you've seen some of the new marketing that TSN is really pushing. They're really pushing a Canadian product, Canadian brand, something that we talked about on the Streakers Island podcast. So I think they're watching. They're like the CIA watching the Streakers Island podcast here. They know what to look for. But
I actually think that's a smart decision, right? Like,
it is.
Now, when you think about the whole like Canada versus them, right? Like they're kind of jumping on that train, right? Like of it being like, oh, we're Canada, support us. And I think that's good, right? Not only does it get you out there, but a lot of people are, especially now, are on that whole Canada versus, it's like Canada versus them, right? So like you might attract a few more people. No, if you're spreading like, oh, we're Canada and we're kind of on this Canada's number one train, you might attract a few more people to get the eyes on the product that normally would be waiting till September to watch the NFL, sitting at home with their NFL paraphernalia waiting for the NFL season. You might catch some of these people that are like, oh yeah, I should support Canada and turn on the CFL tonight. So I think it's actually kind of a smart way to attract new fans to the game.
I think it's a great point, Lane, actually, because this is the real time to really be trying to get new fans in the Canadian Football League, right? And the big thing is, with a lot of other sports, TV ratings have been going down the last few years. The CFL has been the complete opposite, actually. The TV ratings have actually been improving. We are seeing, when people tell me the CFL is dead, I'm like, well, then how come over 600,000 Canadians are watching it on average per game? Why is the Grey Cup peaking at 7-8 million people watching it, right? This is not a dead league. This is a league that is very exciting. It's very high pace. Honestly, and I don't know if I'm just being biased because I've grown up on it, I prefer it over the NFL. I've said it before. I'll say it again. It's a faster league, in my opinion. Like, I get why people like the NFL. Yeah. I don't dislike it. So that's not me taking a shot at the National Football League, right? But if then I might have to put up a graphic that Jacob is crazy instead of Lane is crazy and Dan is crazy. But I don't know. It's just something about the Canadian Football League and its obscure rules I just absolutely love.
Yeah, I think it gets a lot of, like you said, it gets a lot of flack because it's not the NFL, right? And it kind of takes that flack because, let's be honest, the NFL is a bigger product. It's a more marketable product. Mm-hmm. There's a lot more behind it. And Canada, everyone looks at Canada like, oh, gee, it's a maple syrup league, right? But like like you said, but that's the impression, right? But when you actually sit and watch it, you take the time to sit down and actually watch these games and watch these players do what they do on the field. It is a really interesting league to watch. And then a lot of people will say, like, even me, some myself included, I don't think it's fair they don't get higher salaries. I always about, trying to promote this game and get this game to grow where people can look at it more of like, because some people say, well, they don't get a lot of money. I'm like, yeah, but that to me, that just shows more passion than anything. These guys don't get the millions of dollars, and yet they're out here playing for anything instead of trying to make it like, oh, what, I'm a millionaire trying to do this. So many people have like 2 or 3 jobs and still show up to here to entertain their fans every night. And I think that's, you don't get that anywhere else.
No, you're right. That is very true, Lane. That's an interesting way to look at it. These are guys that are very passionate about the league, right? And they really care. And one fan base that I think really cares a lot. We talk about the Saskatchewan Roughriders, and everywhere you go, you will find someone rocking Saskatchewan Roughrider gear. It's one of the funniest things ever, but you always see someone rocking Saskatchewan Roughrider gear. Now, going into this year, they did lose their center and Sean McEwen. They lost their left tackle and Peyton Collins, but they did bring in some, just for a couple of the guys, but they did bring in some big additions, and Mike Rose, who was a 3-time All-Star, Shane Ray, who had a stint in the NFL, plus did play with Corey Mace when he was in the Argos, back on the Argos 2022 Grey Cup run. And you know what? They're hoping that at least if Trevor Harris can stay healthy and AJ Ouellette can stay healthy, I'm just going to be real here right now. I'm not going to get into our Grey Cup predictions just yet, but I could see Saskatchewan going on a legitimate run. This Rough Rider team with the right tools and the right guy staying healthy. Plus, you have Jake Meir now as a really solid backup quarterback. However, what we already have in the comments here, good old Mr. Shades, Red Blacks taking the Rough Riders down. That is the opening game tonight in the league. And yeah, honestly, I think Ottawa could have a big bounce back year too, right? I mean, they seem to be progressing really well. But Lane, do you get what I'm saying? When you look at a guy like Trevor Harris, when he's healthy, these Riders could win the West.
Oh, for sure. The Rough Riders are always a team to be threatening, right? They were pretty good last year. They finished second right behind the Blue Bombers, right? So it's a team that's always, they got, like you said, their fandom is crazy. I think they're actually America's favorite team, as I believe ESPN actually covers all Saskatchewan Rough Rider games because they actually respect the fan base and see it as something they would do. So they kind of get the NFL vibe from the people down south there in the States. So if you're in the States, maybe watching tonight, I'm sure there's a lot of people watching the Saskatchewan Roughriders. But yeah, they're definitely a threatening team. They're always up there in the West, I think. And of course, they got Trevor Harris, who's an all-time pro in the CFL. And I think, if, like you said, if he stays healthy, then they got a good shot.
Well, too, you mentioned Trevor Harris. In only the 12 games he played last year, he did have 3,264 passing yards, 20 touchdowns, and 9 interceptions. Let's be honest, if he has a full healthy year, you're maybe talking about, is Trevor Harris the MOP, right? Like, when he's healthy, he's the best quarterback in the Canadian Football League. And we got to get back to the comment section yet again with good old Max saying, are the Alouettes the Yankees of the CFL? That's an interesting question. I mean, Montreal, again, we'll get into them a little bit later, but I don't know what to make of the Montreal Alouettes actually this season. I mean, you know what? You lose Cody Fajardo. Yes, you bring in McLeod Bethel-Thompson to now back up Davis Alexander. The Owls are a team that I really don't. Sorry, go ahead, Lane.
Says I don't know if it's just me. I'm just not a big fan of Michael Bethel-Thompson. I just saw what he did last year there in the Elks, and he kind of was getting overshown by Trey Ford there. Like, Trey Ford was the one who eventually ended up stealing his job and ended up turning that team around from being a team that could barely win a game to a team that I think this year is a real big dark. We'll get into them, but I think they're a dark horse this year.
Yeah, I mean, that'll be an interesting story there, but I think with Montreal, I don't know if they made the right decision with moving on from Cody Fajardo. We'll talk a bit more about that. But yeah, I could see the Alouettes being the Yankees of the CFL, where it looks like, I mean, they did win that Grey Cup recently, but you look there, I think it's either 15 or 17 players who are on that roster are no longer a part of that roster now. And the CFL, you're going to see that a lot, right? The Toronto Argos, 15 starters who won the Grey Cup last year are not on your team this year, including that entire defensive line has been decimated. But
I think the Blue Bombers would be more like the Yankees, wouldn't you? Like, I would put the Blue Bombers more in that category. They're a team that is expected to be championship pedigree. When you talk about the Yankees, right? True. They're expected to be a championship pedigree team that expected to win it every year. You're expecting to see them in the Grey Cup every year. And you look at the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, and they basically have been doing that, whether winning or losing the last few years here. That's been the team that's kind of been driving the force. They've been either the team to beat or the team beating the other teams. It's been, like I said, the Blue Bombers and the Argos kind of mixing it up the last few years here.
And that's the crazy thing too. Like you look at the Blue Bombers, and maybe it is time to talk a little bit about those Winnipeg Blue Bombers. And yeah, Lane, I think you made a great point that they almost could be considered the Yankees of the CFL, and they've been in the Grey Cup 5 straight years, right?
Yeah,
Which
it's crazy.
that's impressive. However, and sorry, Lane, they've only beat your Hamilton Tiger Cats. They've lost to the Toronto Argos twice and the Montreal Alouettes once. And I'm just going to keep it a buck here and say, even my Argos, Winnipeg should have slaughtered Toronto and Montreal.
Yeah.
Especially Toronto when Chad Kelly was injured. And no disrespect to Nick Arbuckle. He did a phenomenal job filling in for Mr. Kelly. But let's be honest, they're not comparable quarterbacks. But am I going to bet about the Winnipeg Blue Bombers? Absolutely not. I would never bet against this team.
Now, it's unfortunate for them too, right? Like they get a week 1 bye, and let's not forget their starting quarterback, Zach Collaros, is going to be facing a 2-game suspension due to we talked about before with not being able to take his drug test on time. I really think the Blue Bombers here are in a little bit of trouble here to start the season, right? You got a week 1 bye, and then you get the next 2 weeks. So you're not getting your starting quarterback till week 4 against the Edmonton Elks, right? Like,
True.
I don't know. That's a tough start now.
Now, mind you, when you do say Claros was actually only suspended 1 game, which was a big controversy in the CFL.
Right.
It was 2 going into the league, and then it changed to 1. And Rip was saying, I don't know about this year for football for me. And hey, I get it. Being a Tiger Cats fan is a struggle. I just kid. Actually, I think Hamilton's going to be a much better team this year when we get into that team. I think they got a really solid group. But hey, like I said, I think this is the year to really give the CFL a really good shot this year. It's a part of Canadian culture. It is really time to be in that group. But when we look at Winnipeg, they have made a lot of changes, which, you bring in Peyton Logan, which I think this was the move for this team to make, right? The return game sucked last year for Winnipeg, right? And no disrespect to Lucky Whitehead, he's just too old. You brought in Stearns from the Rough Riders. You brought in Gavin Cobb, who's a versatile guy. He's got good speed. I don't believe he's in your starting rotation in receivers. Same with Reggie White. And you brought in a guy like Jonathan Jones, 2-time Grey Cup champion from the Toronto Argos. However, yes, you brought in, and those are just a few of the players. There are more players they brought in and subtracted and whatnot. But I'm more looking at the guys they brought in to replace, bless you, Lane, the sneeze of an angel. It's even silent. But you look at the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, and they are about to say hi to Mr. Moore for you, buddy.
Woo! Here he comes.
Man, we're just talking right now about the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. We've already gone over the Rough Riders. We talked a little bit about the Owls, which are going to get more into the Owls because Max brought in a great question about the Alouettes this year.
Max did?
Yes.
Cool.
Dan, you need to move your phone from the mic, or else I will come upstairs and I will show you where the football don't shine.
I will.
But you lose Adam Bighill because you decide not to bring him back. And I get he's an older guy with injury problems, but he was like the Winton McManus to that group to what it is to Winnipeg. He was the leader, the commander-in-chief of the defense. And you lost Kenny Lawler, that's huge.
Well, and
Dylan Robson's jumping into the comments saying Argos are going to repeat.
So I'm thinking.
Nah, man, Ticats, this is our year. Just like the Leafs always say, this is our. I have it rough, man. In the summer, this is my year, and I get let down, and then in the winter, this is my year, and I cry. I go to my therapist for the next 8 months, but yeah, it's a rough break.
Shades is supposed to see you. I think we were about to put out like milk cartons of Dan's face on it because when is he not on the podcast? We were very concerned. We just had to finish some delicious local cuisine.
Mm-hmm.
But when we look at this Winnipeg team, honestly, I never bet against the Winnipeg Blue Bombers because, well, you've made it to the Grey Cup 5 straight years. It's kind of like anyone betting against the Florida Panthers going into the playoffs this year, right? It doesn't matter if they get to the dance, they can definitely go on a run.
Oh, for sure.
But the big question is, what Zach Collaros will you get this year? He looked good in the preseason, but as Lane mentioned too, right? You're not going to see Collaros until week 3 because he was suspended for not taking his drug test.
But he was allowed to play in the preseason.
Yes. But
that makes sense. How?
Because, Dan, the suspensions don't go into preseason. It's team's choice whether they want to play them. And with Collaros only having a 1-game suspension, you want him ready, which means you're going to be seeing Stevler starting in week 2 for the Blue Bombers.
So if he has a 1-game suspension, why aren't we seeing him to week 3?
Because they have a bye this week.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah, makes sense.
Dan is learning math, which is
that's a dumb time to pick a bye.
Well, and then this is, again, the whole thing about the 10 teams versus 9 teams issue. But when we look at the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, I would say their biggest acquisitions were Peyton Logan and Jonathan Jones. I think those are the 2 guys that you're really going to really bring what they needed. Because you really felt the special teams game was the reason why they struggled. Alex is coming in with some education for you, Mr. Morrow, for your money, saying week 1 bye. LOL. Or should I go, ha ha ha, laughing out loud? But
yeah.
I don't know. I look at this Winnipeg team, and as much as there's some big pieces missing, Drew Otarski's gone, and Big Hill's gone, Kenny Lawler's gone, and I know Lane is happier than a pig and poop about Kenny Lawler coming over to the Hamilton Tiger Cats.
Don't blame him.
I think Hamilton's really hoping that that's the missing piece, because there's some big pieces that are no longer there, right? But I don't think you can bet against this team and arguably against the best player in the league in Brady Oliveira. Like, I'm going to say this right now. Everyone goes on about Zach Collaros. They will only win as many games as Brady Oliveira charges them to. He is, without a doubt, the best running back in the Canadian Football League right now. And arguably the best player in the Canadian Football League right now. And a guy that he has even said he turned down NFL workouts because he just wants to stay home in Canada. Like, this is a guy that is one of those players that you feel could be an NFL player. But he wants to stay home in Canada. All the power to him, right? So, and I see here in the comments, we have the Rouge Squad. That's what we should have titled this episode. Streakers Island Podcast, the Rouge Preview.
I like it. I love it.
But I want to ask you guys here, when we've already talked a bit about the Rough Riders, and do you think Winnipeg is still the team to beat in the West?
Yeah.
Or maybe not so much going into this year? Lane, you're shaking your head yes. Dan, you're kind of looking 50-50.
No, I'm 100% yes. I mean, like Olympia, if we make it to the finals 5 times, that is a dynasty. And I think Winnipeg is a dynasty of the West, and I think arguably the Argos are a dynasty of the East, making it to the Grey Cup 2 or 3 times and winning 2 or 3 times. With Winnipeg, you get guys like Carreros and Brady Oliveira and Willie Jefferson. No one really talks about him. He's a tank. You can't really argue a team with those type of caliber leadership players. And you look at it, that's even off the field too. Like they lost Buck Pierce as their coordinator, but they still have Michael Osei as their coach, and he's an Argo legend, was a legendary player, and he's been turning out to be a legendary coach. So you look at a franchise that has people like that on and off the field, regardless how old they are or how bad it might look on paper or how many pieces they lose. One is they got those key pieces still. You can never take them out of conversation. When it comes to the Rough Riders, mind you, I'm not completely sold yet. I love Trevor Harris, but he is getting up there in age.
Okay, hold on. Before you go on about this, and I don't want to talk NFL too much on this, but you were just in our private chat going on and on that Aaron Rodgers signing in the Steelers is going to save the Steelers. Meanwhile, he has been garbage. He has been terrible the last couple of years. Wayne and I were talking about how smart the Packers look for not keeping this bum.
I need Chazzy. Where's Chazzy? He agrees with me on Aaron Rodgers.
In the 12 games Trevor Harris played, over 3,000 yards, 20 touchdowns to 9 interceptions. And
I love Trevor Harris.
And you have Jake Mayer in the backup slot, which, Dan, I know you're not a big
That's
Jake
the problem.
Mayer fan. No, that's the solution. You got a guy that has starting CFL experience.
Yeah, starting the team to a 4-win record. Like Calgary sucked.
But that Calgary team didn't have anyone for him to throw it to besides a Reggie Bangleton, which Calgary has addressed some of that. But honestly, and I mean, I don't want to give my answer away yet, but I'm going to say, is Winnipeg my team to beat in the West? No, not in the regular season. In the playoffs, that might be a different story. In the regular season, absolutely not. I don't think they are the best team in the West right now. But I'm curious, though, Lane, you were talking earlier about the Edmonton Elks.
Yeah.
So you think Trey Ford is the solution for them this year?
Well, I'm a little confused why they got Cody Fajardo, because I just look at Trey Ford as the solution. Like, he came in here. This was a team that, like I said, they were struggling. They looked like they couldn't get wins. It was looking to be they looked like they weren't even going to win a game that year last year. And then Trey Ford came in and was like, hallelujah. Came in, he looked explosive, he was fast, he's able to, he looks like he can run for miles, he's able to escape so much pressure, which I think, especially in the CFL, is such a gift, right? He's able to get out of that pocket, book it 40 down yards of field. He's got good throwing power, he's got good speed, he's kind of the CFL's Lamar Jackson in a way. He has a lot of those intangibles where it's like, if you get him in trouble with the covering and the receivers, he's just going to take off and go 40 yards deep running. But I'm a little confused why they don't still believe in this guy. Like, I don't get it. Maybe you guys can help me with this. I don't understand bringing in Cody Fajardo when you have a franchise guy, in my opinion, in Trey Ford, who's young, who's ready to look, and he looks like he's ready to take over a starting job.
I think you do that as an insurance policy, as much as you hope Trey Ford can be the guy. And this was a very interesting debate on the TSN top 50 player list, which we'll try to get to our top 20 players today. If not, maybe that's another episode itself. But some of them were arguing, Dave Naylor, who is a Canadian football analyst legend, arguing that right now Cody Fajardo is a better quarterback than Trey Ford.
I agree.
I'm 50-50. I think if you're going pure pocket passer, then maybe. But Trey Ford can do something that I haven't seen, and I'm going to call it out right now, since the legend Damon Allen. Now, I'm not saying he's as good as Damon Allen, by the way. Damon Allen was, in my opinion, the greatest Canadian football player in CFL history, right up there with Warren Moon and Doug Flutie. But what he was able to do is use his legs like a running back and throw like a passer. He learned from McLeod Bethel-Thompson last year how to become a better pocket passer, and now bringing in, Julian Grant to add to that receiving core. You already have Curly Gittens Jr. as another big piece. Yeah, they did let go of Mitchell and they let go of Eugene Lewis, but I think Julian Grant is a 1,000-yard guy in the right situation.
Isn't he?
So I do wonder with Edmonton, and the big thing with Edmonton too is we've talked a lot about the quarterbacks. And Lane, I get why you're a little skeptical on bringing in Fajardo, but at the contract you were able to bring him in at, he is arguably the best backup in the Canadian Football League, and you've redesigned your entire defensive line by bringing in Robbie Smith, Jared Brinkman, Brandon Barlow, and Jake Serezna.
But do you think they're going to start? Sorry, Jacob. Do you think they're going to start Cody Fajardo, or do you think they're going to start with Trey Ford?
They'll start with Trey Ford. You have to start Trey Ford. I think the fans might literally destroy Commonwealth Stadium if you do not start Trey Ford in week 1. Because I don't know if you were watching one of the games last year, and Dan, you probably remember this.
Yeah.
Do you remember when the Edmonton fans were chanting, "We want Trey, we want Trey, we want Trey"?
Yep. I remember that guy. I saw that game, yeah.
So, Dan, actually, this is a good question for you as well. You were never the biggest Cody Fajardo fan before when he was in Saskatchewan. Then in Montreal, we kind of shut you up a bit when he won that Grey Cup. He was the best player, won the MOP in the Grey Cup final. Do you feel that Trey Ford is the franchise quarterback, or do you feel it was the right decision to bring in Cody Fajardo in case he's not?
Cody Fajardo did set me up because I was never really a fan of him in Saskatchewan. I said he was like the Austin Matthews of the CFL in Saskatchewan. He just never got it done. But then you put him in Montreal, and wow, he was a great player. I think he is a great player. I think he just literally won the Grey Cup 2 years ago. And Jacob and I saw him live in the Grey Cup in Hamilton, and he played a phenomenal, complete game.
Mhm.
And he's literally a game-changing dude. He also has really good leadership and attitude off the field. I think that's the main reason why Edmonton brought him in. I think the bigger question of this is why was Montreal so stupid to trade him? That doesn't make any
I
sense
think
to
they
me.
did that
I would
because
have just kept Bethel Thompson as the backup for Edmonton because, like you said, Jacob, trade forward worked really well with him. And this really comes down to my point. You have guys like Bethel Thompson, Cody Fajardo, Nick Arbuckle. Some people might argue Jake Mayer as
Jeremiah
backup
Masoli.
quarterbacks. This really argues my point. You need a 10th team. You got guys like Kadeem Carey, who got over 1,000 rushing yards last year, cut. Okay? Like he's sitting at home doing nothing. He did 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns last year. This league's got so much talent. They desperately need that 10th team. This is living proof of that. But yeah,
I mean, Dan, you're right. There's a lot of good players. It was interesting, and I think this would be another work. By the way, just so everyone's aware, we're going to be doing a lot of CFO content this year. Another show we could do, I saw a great article on Third Down Nation. It was building a team with all the cut players. And you know what? The team actually looked pretty decent. A little thin at quarterback, but besides that, you know what? There were some very big pieces that that could be on other teams.
Right.
But I think with Edmonton, I want to see if you boys agree or disagree with me. I think Edmonton's better than they were last year.
I think so.
Even with losing Eugene Lewis, I think it's better.
The big question mark for me is Trey Ford. I think Cody Fajardo should be the starting quarterback.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I think you have to start Trey Ford week 1.
I think Cody Fajardo set me up. He's a great quarterback.
Now, mind you, shutting Dan
I
up
guess Trey Ford is more exciting.
It could mute his mic, and you'll probably hear him yelling from my mic. That's how loud he is.
I get Trey Ford is more exciting. I totally get that. But as a guy to win or do or die situation, I am not putting Trey Ford in.
Okay, if the Grey Cup final was tomorrow, yeah, Cody Fajardo is my starter. Week 1, it's Trey Ford to see what this kid can do being the starter and be given the keys to the castle. He's always came into Edmonton where, yeah, he's given them a big push, but he's never been able to figure out, but he's never been able to get the team over the hump because by the time he's in that position, it's too little too late. It's kind of like perfect prime example. It's kind of like by the time the Toronto Maple Leafs brought in a better GM and a better coach, too many decisions were made that were unfixable.
That's for sure.
Right? And I see Lane here has some very interesting information from Third Down Nation or the CFL website. I apologize.
Well,
these are the new rules coming into the Canadian Football League.
Yeah, so it's only, I think we should go over it since this is the CFL Preview Show. I think we should go over this and kind of discuss what we think these rules will be and like how this will be affected. So this is the first one here, the grade 2 roughing the passer penalty. The 25-yard grade 2 roughing the passer has been modified to be
25
called.
25 yards. Wow.
Wow, that is a lot.
That's quarter of the field almost. Wow.
That's a lot, eh?
Yeah, I wouldn't want to take that penalty. Talk about flipping the field.
What do you think about that, Jacob? Is that too many
So
yards?
actually, you know what? I like this rule because this is more trying to limit the intent of trying to injure quarterbacks. We saw a lot of quarterback injuries last year in the CFL, and it did lower the points totals we saw in the league, right? And we don't want to see points get lowered in the CFL. If anything, what's so exciting about the Canadian Football League is that you can be down 3 touchdowns with 5 minutes left and still find a way to win. And this can be another way to continue to add more explosive plays. Plus, it's protecting your quarterbacks, which are the biggest key assets. What it's also doing is protecting the knee as well. You think about, Jeremiah Masoli's injury that almost ended his career against the Saskatchewan Roughriders, and calling that only a 15-yard penalty was a joke. This is basically doing like a 5-minute major versus a 2-minute minor, comparing it to NHL to CFL, right? I actually really like this rule.
I agree.
For outrageously late hit, I'm all for this.
I agree.
I think it'll help for guys like Trey Ford too. When you're running down the field, instead of people trying to take his head off, right? You might think twice about how you take this guy down, right? And
Now, as long as they don't go to the extreme of the NFL, where if you tap the quarterback, you're getting a 15-yard penalty, I'm all for it. The grade 2 roughing the passer versus grade 1. I just don't want to see this league is allowing it to be more physical than the NFL, and I don't think they want to go back that way.
Here's the next one here. Automatic ejections. The list of actions that will now get you just automatically kicked out of the game are all low block penalties on kicking plays or punching to the head area. Again, just as more protection for the players here as well.
Yeah.
Again, you know what? I think this is a good rule. We've seen a couple guys have season-ending injuries off really dirty blocks, especially in the Canadian Football League where we don't have a fair catch and we have a proper kickoff. We need to find a way to make these kickoffs safe, but still entertaining. Because I don't know if you guys would agree with me or disagree with me. I think the NFL kickoff and the XFL kickoff is the dumbest thing I've ever seen.
Why even have it?
I just honestly just say every team starts at the 20-yard line and move on with your life. It's boring.
It's just wasting time.
You're just I don't understand it. I think the CFL is doing everything they can to keep it where you're able to have kick returns, because when we have so many good kick returners in this league, like, you have Janarian Grant, Jacob Dedman, Devontae Dedman, Mario Alford, like
he's a big part of Saskatchewan.
Pimbleton and Ottawa's got 2 studs in kick returns. Logan Payton and Winnipeg now. You got to do that as well. And actually, I like too when it's seeing the low hit vulnerability on receivers. Penalty's been created for that as well. And I'm actually liking that idea for that one too. Because when you're jumping up in the air to try to make a great catch, I think it's fine if they tackle you, obviously, and time the hit right. But you can't time the hit to the knees, right? Make it like where they got to do a proper to the chest, waist area, lowest, proper clean hit. And this is going to save injuries. You look at Jalen Acklin last season. Remember when he went for a catch in the end zone, they put basically their head through his pelvis.
That was painful to watch.
That was painful to watch, right? So I think they're doing a good job at trying to limit that.
Now, it does mention if they jump, if they jump in the other, they'll lose that protection on that, which I think is fair, because if you're trying to jump, then obviously you can't avoid the low hits, right?
True.
Yeah.
This is an interesting rule here. This, I think you talked about this before, this new ineligible receivers here, right?
Well, yeah, so this makes it where now for the flea flicker, it's really going to open up the door a lot more, right? Because we see a lot of flea flickers in the CFL. And answer your question, Dan, what a flea flicker is. It is when the quarterback hands it to the running back, then the running back tosses it back to the quarterback, which would now make it so he could throw it to any receiver or any lineman. Of ineligible receivers, right? So that just makes it more interesting. I think you could see more trick plays too. Remember, the CFL is a league where you're allowed to have 2 quarterbacks on the field at the same time. Just as a reminder, Hamilton, Mr. Lane, I'm sure you remember that when they did that with Schultz for a little bit, and I can't remember.
Yeah,
I think it was Mitchell. I can't believe Mitchell's been in Hamilton for like 3 years.
So would you take out the running back in order to put in a second quarterback?
You'd probably take out one of your receivers or one of your offensive linemen.
Wow,
that's going to be crazy.
Yeah, I like these new rules so far.
Here's the offside pass here.
An offside pass is defended the ball directly in any manner and get to his opponent. This team is offside, made to advance the ball. So I believe what this is before, when players were basically purposely kicking the ball into the end zone so they could jump on it. To my understanding, you're not going to be able to do that anymore. Which I actually think, again, you know what? That was a rule that a lot of people were criticizing before. Right, so I'm actually for this again. You know what? Really diving into these rules. I actually like a lot of these rule changes.
It's all about player protection by the most part. Then I think that's important.
It is in a physical league like football.
Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised we all have more career-ending injuries in this game. Thank God we don't, but when you think about these great big 300 men like beating crap out of each other,
this is going to be
especially in the CFL. Like, it's such a physical league.
And this should be an interesting. The removal of restricted major penalties. That's interesting too.
Wow. A restricted penalty is applied when the maximum distance on all major penalties, misconducts, and rough play disqualifications will be removed. The total distance of the penalty would be yards applied to a maximum of to the 1 yard line.
Whoa.
So an example, actually, I like here that they're putting in an example. So plays at the 20-yard line, defending team is assessed a 15-yard grade roughing the passer 2 penalty, rather than the penalty half the distance to the goal, whereby ensured would only be a 10-yard penalty. It would be the full distance applied to the 1 yard line. I really like this.
Wow.
I think this is really smart.
Okay, so I get that. So basically, if you're on like the 20, like they said, if you're on the 20-yard line, you get a 25-yard penalty. You basically get the ball right on the goal line.
Where before it would go to the 10.
Yeah.
Get that.
No, I like that.
Yeah.
That's
a lot better.
So I hope you guys got educated on the new Canadian football rules. Lane Dashko with the quick fingers to get that in time for us. Now, so we've talked about Edmonton, and just a quick summarization on Edmonton. It's going to be, can the quarterback play hold, and will rebuilding an entire defensive line in an offseason work? I think those are your two biggest questions at Edmonton. Yeah. I now would like to move on to the BC Lions, right?
Oh,
and interesting team.
And this is an interesting team, right? I agree with Lane 100p. I don't know what to make of the BC Lions.
Neither do
I. Lost some big players, and Dan, I know you especially have been very, very vocal, which I mean, you're a vocal guy, so that makes sense. But you've been very vocal how you don't feel Nathan Rourke is a franchise quarterback, and they made a mistake letting go of Vernon Adams Jr.
Well, 100%. I mean, before his injury, you could argue VA was the best quarterback in the CFL, and I think you can still argue that now. And let him walk so that a little crybaby of a clipboard has a job. Doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, yeah, I get he's Canadian, that helps your ratio, blah, 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 but I think Vancouver is going to be the worst team in the West this year. I'll just say it. When I said Saskatchewan wasn't sold on Saskatchewan, I don't mean Saskatchewan's going to be a bad team. I think Saskatchewan's going to be a very good team. I just don't think they'll be better than Winnipeg. But BC will definitely be the worst team. And it's too bad because I like the BC Lions minus Rourke. You know, they have a very good team. But he's the leader. He's going to be one stepping it up, and I don't think he will. I think he'll be.
And I think a big thing too, Dan, you talk about Nathan Rourke. When he had that incredible year in BC, his receiving core was also the best receiving core in the CFL. I think.
But yes, what happened?
Receiving core. Well, he got injured, and then yes, he fell apart in that game against
the playoffs. He's like the Austin Matthews. He fell apart.
Rookie starter, not comparable to a 9-year vet, but. Now, if Nathan Rourke does that again this year, you know, yeah, then maybe you're having that conversation. I'm not just yet. But you did bring back James Butler, a running back that he was very familiar with. For some reason, William Stanback and Nathan Rourke never really seemed to click. Part of that is, I think, too, there was a lot of drama in that locker room last year, right? Let's just get that out in the open.
Yeah.
You had a lot of people who felt that it was Vernon Adams' team. You had other people who felt, no, Nathan Rourke deserved the keys to the castle back. And it really divided your dressing room. And I think Vernon Adams did the best he could to not let it divide the dressing room as the veteran and the leader of that group. But it did, right? So this is the year for the BC Lions. In theory, you should be better. But I'm of Dan. I don't know if they're going to – honestly, the West this year I think is more open than it's ever been. Which, by the way, when you're playing in the Streakers app, because the CFL is in the Streakers app, it's going to make your picks that much harder to make on which team you think should win when it's West versus West matchups. Oh, right? Sure. Because I think in the Western Conference, we really don't know who's gonna kind of take over. And the BC Lions, you know what? You don't have Alexander Hollins anymore, although you can go get him back. Edmonton cut him. That really what
a shocker. But can they afford him with salary cap?
You don't have Lucky Whitehead anymore. And Lucky Whitehead and Nathan Rourke seem to have a magical connection. I actually thought if Whitehead was going to come back to the CFL, BC might have been the team to give him a shot. Yeah. You're hoping that Keon Hatcher Sr. can stay healthy and be the guy. Can he? I don't know, right?
I think he can. I think he's a great receiver.
He is a great receiver, and you also have Justin McInnis. And everyone's going, oh, well, Justin McInnis led the CFL in reception yards. That was mostly with Vernon Adams Jr.
Yeah, what,
not with
1,600?
Nathan Rourke. Dan, I don't fully agree with you saying that Nathan Rourke is not a good quarterback. I think he is a good quarterback. I think he's got a lot of good intangibles. He's got a good spiral. He's quick on his feet. He can throw on the run. He's got all the intangibles to be a CFL quarterback. Last year, he didn't play for almost 2 years, which I think was biggest mistake was going to the NFL.
Okay.
And not going to teams where he could have had a chance of playing. I even think if he went to the UFL in between NFL stints, then maybe he could have got somewhere.
Jacob,
but Nathan Rourke had a really bad year last year.
Let me ask you this. Let me
ask you a question.
You think Nathan Rourke isn't all that bad? Okay.
No.
Do you think Cody Fajardo is better than him?
Am I a compare? I don't know because I don't know which Nathan Rourke we're getting, and the reason why I say
I'm looking at last year's stats.
Oh, last year's stats. Cody Fajardo was better. There's not even.
Do you think Bethel Thompson is better?
No.
For last year?
Yeah, last year, Jacob. Bethel Thompson.
Lane's saying no. I'm actually going to say yeah. I think last year, and the reason why. Lane, I want to read you some stats from Nathan Rourke to kind of credit to Dan's point. So in 9 games. He threw for 1,781 yards, 4 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. That was your touchdown to interception ratio was terrible. If you actually look at McLeod Bethel Thompson's stats, if you take away the record, which I get that winning a game is the most important thing, we're actually pretty decent. But then you go to Nathan Rourke in 2022 in just 10 games. 3,349 yards, 25 touchdowns to only 10 interceptions. I don't know which Nathan Rourke we're getting this year.
My point is,
the Nathan Rourke from 2022, the BC Lions will be the best team in the West, maybe the best team in the league.
See, I could be wrong. I just look at it like, he went to the NFL. It didn't really work out there. He tried to come back, and then, maybe just coming back, just trying to jump back into the water there and trying to get back in late halfway through the season there. Just wasn't really working for him. Now he's had a full offseason and a full mind focus to get back in that CFL mindset. And we saw when he was fully invested how good of a player Nathan Rourke really is, right? Like, it's hard to take a look at half a year when he was trying to make a career change and jumping around and getting forced around now. And I feel like now he's had a full offseason to really settle back in and get his mindset back into the CFL game. And you're right, we don't know what we'll see, but I try to believe in the majority over the minority. And based on the 2 years from Nathan Rourke, I think he could get. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw the Nathan Rourke from 2 years ago.
Now, the interesting thing with Nathan Rourke was, though, there was a lot of comparison to Nathan Rourke and Chad Kelly because of some. I don't want to get into the comments and the drama and all that, but there were comments from Nathan Rourke shot back to Kelly, and there was comparisons. They were both starting halfway through the season. Neither one of them had a training camp with the team. Kelly in 9 games threw for 2,451 yards, 10 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, averaging over 300 yards a game, right? So it really just, you look at a guy like Kelly, he was able to bounce back right away where Nathan Rourke didn't. Now, mind you, you compare Kelly's numbers that year to 23. 23 was a lot better. Over 4,000 yards, 23 touchdowns, only 12 interceptions. So it is interesting, Lane, and I do agree with you. We could see Nathan Rourke coming back to form. And you do have James Butler in the running back position where that's going to take some pressure off Nathan Rourke because this guy's one of the better running backs in the league.
My point, though, is that you got Cody Fajardo and Bethel Thompson, and I would even say Nick Arbuckle, that were better than York last year, and they're all backups. I think if York wanted to come back to the CFL, I think that's great. I think we hug him. I think we welcome him with open arms. But I think we put him in a backup situation, and I think he has to earn his spot. And he has not done that yet.
Now, mind you, when you talk, though, about Nathan Rourke, and I think part of the problem was the way he left the Canadian Football League and called it an unexpected speed bump. I think that really... Yeah, I can say this. I think it just really pissed off a lot of guys in the league, maybe even his own teammates. They're like, what do you mean an unexpected speed bump? Now, hopefully for his sake and the Lions' sake and Amar Doman's sake, because I think Amar Doman,
don't like him, period.
Well, that's fine, Dan, but he doesn't have to like you either, right? I mean, I don't blame BC for taking a gamble on this guy. He's they made him the highest paid quarterback in the league, and if he can get back to form, he will become one of the faces of the CFL, as we talked about in our pre-recorded show, which we have a new schedule coming out. It's going to be live on Mondays and Thursdays, not Tuesdays and Thursdays, post pending for tomorrow. But time will tell with BC. But again, it is more than just Nathan Rourke that has to step up. I thought BC's defense was very inconsistent last year. Haven't made a lot of changes in that defensive group. I don't know, right? I've always been a BC Lions fan, to be completely honest with you guys. They've been one of the teams besides of my Argos that I absolutely love. And you have a Mark Dolman that is pulling all the stops to get fans in the building. I mean, he's got Snoop Dogg performing for whatever. That's cool. I mean, now, mind you, the Argos have the Super Dogs performing their home opener, which I've seen a lot of backlash on that, actually. I honestly think the Super Dogs are a great show. They're at the CNE every year, too. People do travel all over the world to see the Super Dogs. I actually don't know why the Argos are. They're the dogs that catch the Frisbees when they throw them across the whole field. Like, it's actually really cool. Dogs. I actually don't know. They are dogs, Dan. That's very true. I think Toronto needs to do a better job at marketing and take a note from BC. BC markets the crap out of their team. So I hope for BC Lions' sake that we're wrong, but I'm going to say it now. I think that the BC Lions, if Rourke can't find a way to step up his game, because I like Masoli. I don't think he's a starting quarterback in this league right now. I think he's a good backup, but he's not a starter you want to rely on for a whole season. And if this defense can't shape up and create more turnovers, they didn't create a lot of turnovers last year, this BC Lions team could potentially be the worst team in the West.
For sure, yeah.
Because you're putting a lot of faith in a guy that's done it for 10 games.
Yeah.
Because even that year, he got injured. I'm not blaming him for an injury, but he got injured. You're putting a lot of faith in a guy. And you know what? If it works out, you'll look like the Argos. They'll look like geniuses when they let McLeod Bethel-Thompson walk to bring in Chad Kelly as their starter after he did that magic in the Grey Cup. You literally took a quarter and a half, and you went, okay, this is our starter. BC's taking 10 games and going, okay, this is our starter. We're seeing a lot of that this year. The Montreal Alouettes, 5 games. Davis Alexander. Okay, this is our starter.
Trey Ford in
Edmonton. Unlike the Calgary Stampeders, just to kind of roll out the West here, and then we'll get to the Ottawa Red Blacks next, because I don't know if we're going to get through every team today before kickoff. But we look at the Calgary Stampeders. They went out and said, we have a quarterback problem. Would you agreed? Jake Mayer. I don't know if Jake Mayer was the only reason why that team couldn't put together wins, because they also brought in Flo. They also brought in Dominic Rhymes. Like, they did a lot more than just.
Jake Mayer is like the Joseph Wall with the CFL.
Anyways,
he is.
Even the StreamYard duck is sick of your nonsense. What the Dan? I'm the duck, and you need to duck off. Kiss my rump. But I look at the Calgary Stampeders, and
what do you say of that?
I think the Calgary Stampeders are the most underrated team in the West right now. No one seems to think, and I couldn't believe when I was watching preview shows, well, the only other preview show really on TSN, saying that they don't feel Vernon Adams Jr. is enough for the Calgary Stampeders. What do you mean he's not enough? He's arguably the best quarterback in the CFL.
Literally.
He was on pace for over 6,000 yards before he got hurt last year.
Yeah.
If that O-line can give him enough time, and when there's not enough time, if he can use his legs. They also have Mills, who's a very good running back, who I think is looking to have a 1,000-yard season this year. He looks very determined. That offense in the preseason looks absolutely electric. I don't know about you boys. I think Calgary could end up being a very big surprise this year.
Yeah, I think Calgary will either finish second or third in the West. I really do. I think second's a toss-up between Calgary and Saskatchewan.
So the way you're talking, though, you still seem to think that for sure Winnipeg's going to win the West.
100%.
Okay. What do you think, Lane? I know you've been really amped up on the Edmonton Elks with Trey Ford being your new guy. But how do you feel about the Calgary Stampeders, right? Like they have a lot of new players, and they brought in, I think, like I said, I think they brought in the best quarterback available. How do you feel about the Stamps coming in this year? Are they another team that you think could surprise some people?
Yeah, for sure. I think there's a lot of teams that you're gonna see a little bit of flip flopping this year, right? Like I think, the Stampeders haven't really had a great quarterback since getting rid of Bo Levi Mitchell, right? You look at their records, especially last year, 5-12. They used to be a dominant team. They've kind of fallen off in the last little bit, but now you bring in Vernon Adams Jr., right? Like that's a name. That's no slouch of a name, A really good quarterback, I think they could turn some heads too. Like, we talked about some teams I could see a lot of flip flop in here, right? Like in the West compared to last year, where like it was Blue Bombers, Rough Riders, Lions, Elks, and Stamps. I could see the Elks and Stampeders even putting their names in that and trying to maybe grab a top spot here and move like a Rough Riders or Lions down. Like maybe like Dan was saying, if Nathan Rourke doesn't work out, there's a spot that's available, right?
Mm.
And that'll be interesting. Not that we see a lot of trades in the CFL, but hypothetically, if Nathan Rourke's not working and let's say Masoli isn't your guy, let's say Trey Ford's having an outstanding year in Edmonton, you might see Cody Fajardo being traded, or McLeod Buffalo Thompson if Davis Alexander, which the court's really out on him. But to talk more about some of the acquisitions Calgary got, it's really the defense that they brought in. They brought in Miles Brown from the Rough Riders, who's really expected to provide a lot of strength in the nose tackle. Unfortunately, Fraser Sopik had an injury, and he just decided to retire, hang up the cleats. But, wish him all the best in his retirement. They brought in Flo from the Toronto Argos. They did lose Cameron Judge to get him, but Flo is a difference maker on your defensive line. And they brought in Damon Webb, who is a difference maker in the DB situation. Right, he's slotted to play the boundary halfback position, which is a position that can get left on its own at times, but he is a defensive back that can handle that responsibility. I think this was a really, really smart decision by Calgary, and some people might say this isn't enough, but you also brought in Dominic Rhymes. Malik Henry, unfortunately, looks like it's going to be out until Labor Day, which that really sucks for the Calgary Stampeders. But I mean, I don't know. I feel Vernon Adams Jr. is enough to turn that offensive around, especially when you have Reggie Bangleton and Dominic Rhymes. And Rhymes and Vernon Adams Jr. together, I think, could just be a match made in heaven.
Oh, I totally agree. I think it is enough. I mean, it's like the franchise player, right? And I'll just say it here. If we see Nathan York not work out, Trey Ford not work out, or Alexander might not work out, something like that, do you maybe see halfway through the season Aaron Rodgers getting a call for the CFL?
No.
Oh, no.
He says he wants to play in the CFL.
I don't care. But just to give you some numbers, I mean, Aaron Rodgers, he's just going to go on his darkness retreat if he ends up not going to the Steelers. Just some stats here on Vernon Adams Jr. And in one full year in the BC Lions in 2023, in 18 games, threw for 4,769 yards. Great number. 31 touchdowns to 18 interceptions. Last season, and I believe he only started in 7 or 8 games.
It's unreal.
Just under 3,000 yards, 16 touchdowns to 9 interceptions. They call him Big Play VA for a reason.
Yeah, exactly.
And Calgary last year could not flip the field to save their lives.
No.
With this acquisition and adding Dominic Rhymes, having Reggie Bangleton, and I mean, my gosh, if Malik Henry can get healthy.
Oh, wow.
And I'm going to say this here too. If Malik Henry ends up not getting healthy, you're calling Alexander Hollins and say, hey, do you want to play with your buddy Vernon Adams Jr. again?
I'm surprised no one's called him yet.
Teams are waiting to kind of see what their rosters look like first. But it's very confusing of Vernon Adams Jr. You look at his stats statistically, and it's weird how much he's bounced around the league. Like you look in Montreal in 2019, 3,942 yards, 24 touchdowns, 13 interceptions. Both seasons in BC, he looked really strong. You kind of wonder, why can't this guy stick anywhere? And he seems like such a good guy too. Like, yes, okay, he every year he has one game, funny enough, usually against Toronto, where he gets intercepted so much you think he's seeing ghosts. Like, I remember there was a game 2 years ago where the Argos got 6 interceptions on him. I think last year in the game in Toronto, they got 4 or 5 interceptions on him. But you think about it, you look at his 9 interceptions last year, 5 of them were against Toronto in one game. You take away that one game, well, yeah, I think he also threw for 2 or 3 touchdowns. That touchdown interception ratio, though, looks a lot better. So Vernon Adams Jr. is a guy that I think, too, with Dave Dickinson, who is the type of coach who really wants to push the ball downfield. And I agree with you, Lane. For the first time since Bo Levi Mitchell, the Calgary Stampeders have a real starting quarterback.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't the Argos create the most points off turnovers last year?
Yes, they did. They gave it the most yards, but But I mean, the Argos defense looks very different than last year. We're not going to have too much time to get into the East today. I think we might have to do it. We might have to save an East preview. Maybe, you know what? We'll just have to go live again tomorrow twice.
Who knows? I'm down.
Who knows? I don't know. I only run the show. How am I supposed to know what we're doing? But I remember it, boys. I said to you both, I'm worried an hour isn't going to be enough time to get through.
I thought you were nuts, but you were right.
And well, we got some great comments as well. So I appreciate everyone watching the show in the comments. Like, we're getting some great feedback. But I want to talk about Mr. Shade's Ottawa Red Blacks, and they are facing off against the Saskatchewan Roughriders tonight. Funny enough, if this was the old days, it'd be the Roughriders versus the Roughriders.
Yeah.
How are you boys feeling about the Ottawa Red Blacks? I am shocked that a lot of people feel this team isn't very good. I don't understand it.
Call me crazy, but I challenge you guys on the Streakers app for rivalry this morning. And I actually, with Shades, I picked the Red Blacks to win this game.
I'll accept that rivalry right now.
Yeah.
I've been busy, okay? Mama needed a new phone, so I had to help.
Who's the starting quarterback for the Ottawa Red Blacks? Would it be Schultz?
Wow.
Drew Brown.
Okay.
And the backup is Klum, which I really like Klum. He's a special player. He's kind of like a Trey Ford, like very active in the pocket with his feet and everything. I think he could be a future CFL quarterback one day too.
Well, because what I love about Dustin Crum is most quarterbacks slide to not take a hit. Dustin Crum is trying to tuck you.
Yeah,
trying to run you over, which you don't see that from a quarterback very often. So that is very exciting. But
they spent the big money and got Lewis in the offseason.
And I don't think people are giving enough credit to how big of a move bringing in Eugene Lewis actually is.
Especially of those two quarterbacks.
Yeah. I mean, you arguably have two of the best quarterbacks. Not the best, but you arguably have two very good quarterbacks. And I think Dustin Brown, screw it. We're combining the two guys together. I think
legend.
I think these are players that will actually make a very big difference on this team, and you're bringing in Eugene Lewis to add to the receiving core. And Lane, I see you have Drew Brown stats that we're going to bring onto the screen.
I did not know he was that good.
Wow. That's what I'm saying. He's actually really good. I kind of question why Ottawa let him walk with aging Zach Collaros, to be completely honest with you.
You mean Winnipeg?
I mean Winnipeg. Yeah, sorry.
Winnipeg let him walk.
I was not familiar with. This is not just a meme. I was not familiar with your game, but
he's a great quarterback.
Wow, that's really good stats.
And this is my point. A couple of years ago, he was a backup. So my point is, the CFL really needs a 10th team.
Dan really wants a 10th team in the CFL.
I really do. I mean, you got so much talent, you can almost do 12 teams.
Well, you look at a guy like Drew Brown, and he's young. He's only 28. He's 2 years younger than me. And as I like to tell my co-ops, I'm getting old. But I think Drew Brown.
I feel.
You got to remember, too, Drew Brown was injured for a good chunk of the season, too, and still managed to put up just under 4,000 yards. I thought in that playoff game against Toronto, I thought Drew Brown looked very good.
He did.
The biggest problem was they didn't have a running game. They said, okay, let's go get William Stanback.
Yeah, literally.
You fixed the problem, in theory. So I look at this Ottawa Red Blacks team, and I don't know if I'm agreeing with Shade saying that for sure Ottawa's going to win tonight, but they have a very good shot.
I did, and with Streakers up, I really think Ottawa's a very underrated team. I really do.
But I also think the Rough Riders are an underrated team. I think the Rough Riders,
you're right.
Trevor Harris stays healthy all year, I could argue might be better than the Winnipeg Blue Bombers.
Wow.
If he can stay healthy, which I don't know if he can, that's the biggest problem. That's why I was really surprised they let Shea Patterson walk, who much as the win-loss record wasn't there, I felt he was a pretty good quarterback, but then the Winnipeg Blue Bombers cut him. A lot of good players got cut this year, like Kadeem Carey, Alex Hollins. I know, Dan, as much as you and I both weren't surprised about this move by Toronto, Cameron Dukes, guy was just under 500 as a starter last year for the Argos. Like, there's a lot of good players that got cut this year. But when I look at this,
cut?
Pardon?
Brown got cut. The winning
guy? Kevin Brown got cut. But when we look at this Ottawa Redblacks team, how do you guys expect this team to take a step up, a step back, or kind of where they are?
Step up.
Why?
Why? Because Montreal really screwed up for his offseason. I think Montreal's going to take a step down. Montreal was starting to build something. They won the Grey Cup. They made it to the Eastern Conference Finals a few times before and after they won the Grey Cup. And then they blew it all up to give Alexander a chance because he went 5-0. Okay, that's very cute and all, but doesn't mean he's a starter. And, they don't have guys like Stanback and Lewis and different guys they had in the past, right? And I think we're going to take a step down. I think the Ottawa's going to take a step up, and I also think Hamilton's going to take a step up. The Ticats, they're very active in the offseason, right? And Bo Levi Mitchell in the second half of the season last year looked like Bo Levi Mitchell from 10 years ago. He looked phenomenal. So if he could put up those numbers again with the new additions, holy cow.
Baby.
Just to kind of remind you guys of some of the guys that the Ottawa Redblacks brought in. Eugene Lewis, obviously, arguably the best 50-50 catch receiver in the CFL. They also drafted a guy named Keelan White from the University of Manitoba. People are thinking he's going to be a guy that can contribute immediately, enough that they actually cut Frenchie from their roster, which was a surprise.
Yeah.
They brought in Dan Onababoye, which I actually really like this addition with him and Stanback as your 1-2 running back punch. Onababoye was really brought up by Andrew Harris when he was in Toronto briefly, which now actually he's a coach in the Saskatchewan Roughriders, should help AJ a lot this year. And you obviously, too, you brought in William Stanback, two-time CFL All-Star who rushed for just under 1,200 yards last season with the BC Lions. And you brought in Robert Priester on the defense, a free agent signing out of Toronto. I really like Robert Priester. I think he's an excellent halfback. So the big question will be, can the Red Blacks offensive line hold up? They didn't really address it much, which is kind of that I think is the big question mark around this Ottawa Red Black team. But I think they'll be a good team this year. I don't think they'll be competing for first in the East, truthfully, and I don't think we're going to have enough time to really get too deep into the other teams in the East because we also got to preview tonight's game. But I think it's going to be Toronto and Hamilton that are pushing for top in the East.
Yeah, I agree.
Which that could really come down to who wins the season series, which Hamilton beat Toronto every game in the regular season last year.
What it comes down to, as it comes
Lane
down
must love me saying that stat. That hurts me to say, but Lane looks.
What it'll come down to the Labor Day Classic. I mean, Labor Day Classic is arguably one of the best games in the season.
Oh, the best, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, the only one you can think of it being more is a Banjo Bowl, but that long Labor Day weekend, that's those games with Labor Day Classic, Toronto Argos, Banjo Bowl with Winnipeg and Saskatchewan, and the Battle of Alberta. They're really going to determine the playoff spots, I think, this year, because I think these teams are really that close. I think we're not going to really see anyone run away with anything until that late of the season.
So, but I think when we look at the Ottawa Red Blacks, I think we'd all agree they're better than last year, as much as they lost a guy like Damon Webb, who is a big piece to fill in the defensive back position. And that could be a sore spot. But I think they have enough offense that they can get out of trouble there. Would you boys agree with me when I say I think the Ottawa Red Blacks are one of the teams in the East that really improved this year?
Yes.
I think you add Eugene Lewis and you fix your running back situation. Because Dominic Rhymes, for some reason, never really quite fit in Ottawa as well as they were hoping he would, which I was really surprised. His wife's from Ottawa. His family lives in Ottawa full time. I thought that was going to be a match made in heaven. I was like, wow, Red Blacks got their piece. And I've been a closeted Red Blacks fan ever since they kind of were really struggling, but the fan base kept kind of coming out there and encouraging
Smiling Hank.
Now, I'm very nervous about being a closeted Red Blacks fan because I think this team could be, I don't know if they're fighting for top in the East, but they're definitely fighting for potentially home field.
Oh, yeah.
It depends if they can go 500 against Toronto and or Hamilton and then win a couple extra games in the West. Anything's possible, and Timothy goes to school, right? But they play the Saskatchewan Roughriders tonight. And what do you guys think is going to be the key issue looking into this game?
Probably going to be coming down to I'm always a big believer in football, at least in my opinion. I think it always comes down to the quarterbacks, right? Like I feel like the quarterback dictates the game tonight. So we'll see. My opinion would be like who outduels who tonight. And I'm actually going to take the Ottawa after seeing Drew Jones' stats there. I'm going to take the Ottawa Red Blacks. I was like I said when I prepared this game, and I kind of thought coming into tonight when we were going to do our predictions, I was like, oh, Saskatchewan's going to win. But after that, I got to change my mind after I see some stats. I think the Ottawa Red Blacks will actually pull up the win tonight.
Wow.
Yeah, and you know what, too, and this is very interesting, too, when you look here for Ottawa. I think the key for the Ottawa Red Blacks, if they can get this win tonight, which, Lane, I'm not disagreeing with you, I don't think they can, they got to protect Drew Brown, and if they can get Drew Brown to get Eugene Lewis has potential to break the most consecutive touchdowns in a row, like in a most amount of touchdown getting streak per game in CFL history. He's hoping to get his 9th or 10th straight, I believe, touchdown game in the regular season. And you have this dual threat of William Stanback and Dan Anababoye. But the big question is, can they protect Drew Brown against Saskatchewan's defense, a team that really likes to rush the passer? They like to be creative the way they rush the passer. You got Rowan Milligan in the Rough Riders, which I'll be honest, we're going to have to do another day of our best players in the league, but he's up in my top 3. I'm saying that right now. I'm not telling you who I'm taking out of my top 3 from TSN's list. TSN, read a book. But I can't. I love the guys over at TSN. But you look at the Rough Riders here, it's kind of like a redemption story. Can these guys stay healthy? Trevor Harris and AJ Ouellette both had a lot of injury problems last year, right?
That's the key, in my opinion.
If they can stay healthy, it's going to be tough. And you're going to really see Schaefer Baker's also coming back from injury. That was a big loss for the Rough Riders last year. It's going to be a big test for the Red Blacks secondary. I'm not going to tell you who's going to win this game yet. Dan, I want you to tell me first. Who's winning this one tonight?
I think Ottawa. I think everyone's underestimating Ottawa. And I hear what Lane's saying about the quarterbacks. I think the key of this game is going to be the running backs. AJ Ouellette was really injured last year. He really hasn't had a big year in Saskatchewan since his big years at the Argos. He's lost I think he said he lost 15 pounds during the offseason. So now he's going to be a lot lighter, a lot faster, and he's still very strong and barky, obviously being a Whistler. And I thought it was very smart Saskatchewan hiring Andrew Harris, the running back coach, because he was a great mentor for AJ Ouellette back in the Argo days and got him where he is. And you look at Ottawa's weak point last year was the running game, and they addressed the running game with former Argo again, Anababoye and Stanback?
William Stanback. Yeah, they brought in William.
Yeah,
I know it's going to be tough to keep track of.
So for both these running backs, this game have statements to make starting the year. So I'm going to see a big game from these running backs.
So you guys are both calling the Ottawa Red Blacks here.
Yeah.
I am going to be different than you boys. I think the Saskatchewan Rough Riders are going to win a high-scoring affair. Ooh. I think that the Ottawa secondary is going to have a hard time slowing down Trevor Harris's accurate passing ability. He has the second highest completion percentage, and not just Canadian football, and professional football history. This is a guy that consistently throws around 73% of his passes are dead on the money. And that's going to be very, very hard for the way this team defends, right? Because if you try to do a middle linebacker blitz, which they love to do a lot with Darius Pickett, Trevor Harris reads the hot routes quicker than pretty much better than anyone in the league. The only ones you'd maybe argue that are better are guys that aren't playing, and Cody Fajardo and McLeod Buffalo-Thompson. Guys that really read the quick reads well, and so does Nick Arbuck. Actually, a lot of quarterbacks CFL read the quick read, right? But I think Trevor Harris reads it better than anyone else. And we talk about AJ Owlett's injury. He didn't really play much in preseason. He's had the whole offseason off. I think he's going to start the year off strong. It'll more be, can he finish the year off strong? But I think right now, going into this game, which kickoff is any second now because it's 9 o'clock, I'm taking the Saskatchewan Rough Riders. So we'll see between Lane, Moore, and myself who will get the Streakers points in the Streakers app tonight. But boys, I think it's time we sign off and head into this amazing showdown. I apologize to the viewers that we did not. Dan wants ice cream, and we're not having meatloaf for once. So there you go. I apologize to the viewers that we did not get through every single team in the league. All that means is we got to do another show. Yeah. So we will pick a day between tomorrow, Saturday, and Sunday. I'd like to do it before the Toronto-Montreal games. We didn't really talk about the Alouettes or the Argos too much yet. So maybe we'll try to go on about 45 minutes before that game, and that should be able to get us through the Alouettes, the Argos, and the Tiger Cats.
I think we do it tomorrow.
That's what I just said.
Oh, okay.
But Lane's just like, oh boy, how do I work with these guys? You know what, Lane? You're so dashing. You can just handle our craziness. But I'm Jacob Moore, the self-proclaimed sports analyst. Thank you, everyone, to watching. Thank you for all the likes, comments, and shares. We have better late than never, Mr. Moore, for your money.
Woo! Class started 2 hours ago. Oh, am I late?
And Lane Dashing Dashco, who will probably be still in StreamYard for the rest of the day, anticipating tomorrow's shows.
I just don't know how to close it. I can't.
Big red button, bro.
But thank you very much, everyone, for watching the show. Thank you to all the new viewers, to our viewers that have been with us since day one. We will be back tomorrow for some CFL, and I'm assuming we're going to be doing an Oilers-Panthers preview show as well.
100%.
So we're going to be very busy. We'll see you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.